Um, this is the 10th video of the day, so YouTube won't allow me to make another video today. So if you want to follow me on Eternal Light. The link is down below. In this video, I would like to talk about football, what Americans call soccer, and not many people watch my videos for now, so I don't know who I am speaking to, but I'm just speaking to myself through the mediation of others anyway. So I just want to show you the inherent reason in modern culture and everywhere, and most notably in sport. And my view of God is that God is not some otherworldly entity, God knows where, but God must be made manifest by the intellectual understanding of his presence within the world. And what people call beautiful, divine, spiritual is the presence of God on earth. What they call bad is also kind of God's presence on earth, but that's more complicated to understand. But I would like to talk about soccer or football, and especially the team which is considered to be the greatest in the history of soccer, Barcelona of 2010-11, led by Guardiola when Messi was in his prime with the magic triangle, the holy trinity of Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, but actually it was the entire team. And I would like to show you the Hegelian reason in this team and in the whole of soccer. I'm just planting the seeds, and those who love soccer, I don't watch soccer anymore, but those who do, well, when watching this video, they will understand, hopefully. This was total football, and some even said that it was totalitarian football, and it was for some positive football because it was beautiful, it was exuberant, it was rational, it was clinical, it was successful, and it was opposed to Jose Mourinho's football, which was considered negative football, destructive, ugly football, boring football. But there were also people who thought that Barcelona was boring and that Mourinho was courageous. So there were conflicts within the mind of football fans. And for those who are Americans and who don't know anything about soccer, imagine the difference between San Antonio Spurs with Greg Popovich and the fluid passing game of the Spurs in their prime, and compare that with, I don't know anything about basketball, but imagine probably one of LeBron's team where the team was kind of mediocre, but LeBron, out of his own talents, made successful game-winning efforts. So that would be my broad view. A harmonious totality is where what Immanuel Kant and Hegel call the idea, which is a conceptual totality, which determines, it is a universal or a whole which determines every part within it. And an example of an idea is life, because life is organic, and it is the idea of life which integrates and determines all the parts of an organism so that they function in harmony when the organism is not sick. But even then, there are counter processes to restore health, but that's complex. So in an ideal totality, each part is what it is in relation to all other parts and in relation to the whole. And this is this interconnectedness, this interrelatedness of all the parts functioning in a harmonious totality, which makes it beautiful and spiritual and magical. And yeah. And Hegel says in his logic that to oppose the parts and the whole is a distinction made by the understanding, and rational, in the sense of vernunftisch, consideration of the relationship between parts and whole is to say that the whole consists in all of its parts, and the parts have their essence in the whole. So yeah, that's dialectical interaction. So yeah, the idea is that when the universal determines the particular, so Guardiola's Barcelona team of 2011 and probably Popovich team of the San Antonio Spurs, or I don't know about American basketball, but maybe the Bulls under what's his name, Phil Jackson. Yeah, that was probably similar, and probably in every sport it functions like that. The idea is that a harmonious totality is where all contradictions and all opposites are regulated and function for the good of the whole. And this is an ideal republic for Plato. And what mankind has ceaselessly tried to achieve is the ideal republic, but it has constantly failed. But an idea made manifest has been successful in the realm of sports, and that's why people love watching beautiful, harmonious, totalitarian sports teams. Yeah. And then there's the role of the negative. The negative is that which is separated from the whole in Hegel's philosophy, and I identify as the negative. Negative is the condition of freedom, because to be free is to negate something, and to be absolutely free means to absolutely negate everything, but not in a negative way, in an affirmative way. The will, pure will, is pure negation. When you will something, when you want something, you negate a given state of being, and you negate it, and you assert your will through changing or not changing. Accepting is an act of the will also, and this is a negative act. That's why freedom is ambiguous, because everyone loves freedom, but people don't like responsibility. But freedom and responsibility come together. You cannot have one without the other. So yeah. And in this total football made manifest by Guardiola, a defender was not a defender, and a forward or a striker was not a striker, but a defender was a striker, and a striker was a defender, because all the roles were played reciprocally by all the members of the team, to a certain extent, of course. But an idea that when people say that negative or boring or ugly football is when a defender just defends and a striker just attacks. And a total football, which is also beautiful football, spiritual football, a defender goes out of itself, and a striker goes out of itself too in a defensive part. And each member of the team has a unity of opposite determinations within it, and in harmony with the whole, and it produces symphonic football and beautiful football. And they played Barcelona by pressing, passing, alternating between short passes, long passes, and this was an alternative between quantitative determination, because when you make short passes, the opposite team regroups around you and they come to press you, and the pressure comes, and then you have to make a qualitative change by making a long pass, which is actually a quantitative change but brings about a qualitative change. And then the opposite team will be forced to expand, to not to be overwhelmed, and to grasp and to capture the ball back. And this alternate movement between concentrating the opposite team on one side of the field, and when they come at you, you make a long pass to the other side of the field, and you enlarge and you widens the football pitch, and you remain in control of the game. And that was brilliant. It's kind of Parker, Ginobili, Duncan with Popovich. If you don't know European football, that's the same thing with the Spurs of San Antonio. And this is the Holy Trinity. And what was so brilliant about Barcelona is that Xavi, who was the mastermind of the team on the field, Messi was the creative genius, Xavi was the mastermind, and Xavi embodied on the field the mind of Guardiola, who was the real mastermind. And Guardiola was kind of the Hegel of football managers, because he incorporated within himself Johan Cruyff and all those who had influenced Johan Cruyff, but also the negative aspect of negative defensive football, because he had been brought and educated in Italian football, which is more negative. So he had a totality within his mind, and that's what makes Guardiola so brilliant. And when Messi is kind of ambiguous, because when he had he needs freedom to express his creativity, but when he's given too much freedom, it can disturb the balance of the team. And Barcelona from 2017 up until 2021 has known a series of catastrophic, embarrassing defeats because Messi was given too much freedom and he did not participate in the life of the whole. So he brought unbalance to the team. He didn't work, he didn't defend, he didn't do anything, and that brought the catastrophic results that Barcelona had gone through. So there's always this ambiguity of the role of the negative: freedom, creativity, lack of investment. It's always ambiguous. Um, this spiritual football succeeded in completely annihilating otherness. That's something that basketball cannot understand. But in this soccer games of Barcelona in their prime, the opposition almost did not exist. Barcelona monopolized the totality of the ball. They set the pace of the game. They completely annihilated the opposition. There was no game. It was, some people said it was so masterfully controlled that it was almost boring. It was so beautiful, so perfect that it's just boring. So this thought crossed the mind of some football thinkers at the time. So it was totalitarian football, and in a totalitarian state, and in a totalitarian state of mind, to be free is to do what is mandatory, what you must do. And Hegel is kind of a totalitarian thinker because he says that the true freedom is to obey necessity, and the true necessity is to become free. So freedom and necessity are dialectically interrelated in Hegel's system. So Hegel is a totalitarian thinker. So this Barcelona team was a perfect balance between the Apollinian principle and the Dionysian principle because it was extremely rational. They were hardworking. Guardiola was a fanatical worker in organizing the team, but it produced, so it was Apollinian with order, rules, clarity, rationality, but it produced beauty, and not a classical beauty, but an exuberant beauty. And some of the goals that they scored, the games that they produced were absolutely brilliant to watch. And then I would like to talk about Jonathan Wilson. He was a journalist, maybe he still is, at The Guardian. He was an intellectual thinking about football, and he wrote a book, Inverting the Pyramid. It's the history of soccer tactics. And he shows that from the primitive, individualistic, kind of aristocratic but disorganized outburst of individual freedom, which was conflicting in the 19th century and the early parts of the 20th century football has, through a progressive, what I would call a Hegelian process and a spiritual process of development, has come to develop itself into a total view of football where the collective has been replacing the individual freedom, and the idea that everyone must attack has become everyone must defend, and find balance in this holistic, totalistic, I know it's not an English word, this total view of football. And this is a spiritual process, and I'm sure that's a bet, but if you want to understand the history of football tactics and strategic changes, you have to understand Hegel's logic, Hegel's phenomenology, because each progress or regression in the history of football tactics brought about its own negation, which included the negative within itself, and grew stronger and developed more sophisticated football tactics, which it's always in constant motion. There's an interaction between tactics, physical aspects, intellectual aspects, training, health. It's a total a total process. And I would just end by saying that the greatest goals scored by this Barcelona team and the greatest goal in the history of football are those where you just have to pass the ball into the net. It's not an individual effort, it's a collective effort where the striker just pushes the ball into the net because the opposition has been completely annihilated, and it is the triumph of the totality. And that's the lesson to remember from football, soccer, and basketball, and any other sport. And yeah, that's it.